You are listening to
PackersTalk.com. This Green Bay Packers podcast is brought to you by Mayfield Sports Marketing, our official sports marketing agent for player appearances. To book a Packers player for your next event, go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances. Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If the Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Amanda, come in.
10-4.
Have you infiltrated the security system yet?
Locked and loaded. Ready to lower myself into the enemy war room.
I'm lowering you down now.
I have access. The Packers are in for a tough one this week. I need the password to proceed.
The password is read option.
I hate that password.
Me too. You know which wires to cut.
Always go for the green and gold. Here we go. I'm Amanda Geffre.
And I'm Chris Callaway, and you're going with us behind enemy lines. Welcome to another week of Packers football and Behind Enemy Lines, a podcast hosted through PackersTalk.com. You can find us on iTunes at PackersTalk.com, as well as on Twitter at EnemyLinesGB. I'm one of the hosts, Chris Callaway, on Twitter at CCallaway33, and I'm joined, as always, by my dear friend and fellow owner, Amanda, who you can find on Twitter at Amanda R. Geffre. The Packers will host the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday night with the NFC North Division title on the line. They could have wrapped it up last week in Arizona, but didn't go so well for the Packers in the desert, did it?
I think they were sleeping when they played on Sunday.
A little too much eggnog that weekend, maybe? Kind of a little bit of a hangover?
I don't know. Maybe. Christmas hangover.
It was
too many sugar cookies.
Did you, physically watch the whole game? Because I will admit I didn't, because it was tough.
It was so ugly.
Yeah, and I was at a family Christmas thing, and there were a bunch of screaming babies and cousins and whatnot, and it was 30-8 at some point. It was bad.
It crushed your Christmas spirit, didn't it?
To a certain extent, yeah. We left family Christmas early because we were going to wait and watch the whole game and then drive home from Madison, but nope, we decided to pack up and leave early because the game was well in hand. So I guess that was a positive.
Yeah, no, I watched till halftime, and then we were making homemade noodles for Aaron's grandparents were coming down to visit us, and then I just kept making noodles and didn't go back to watching the game. And, my father-in-law was giving me a colored play-by-play every time the Packers did something wrong, which was very often, as you can imagine. So I just didn't watch it. I didn't really pay attention, and I didn't bother looking at anything until Monday morning, and then I still kind of avoided it because it was just bad. I don't really know how to explain other than, it's like they didn't show up.
Right, and I had a bad feeling going into the game. I didn't think that they were going to win. I predicted that they were going to lose, I think, 31-17. Well, it was worse than that. So,
well, we kind of talked about them losing this game in the beginning of the season anyways, because
right.
Arizona is a tough team.
Right. Let's talk about them for a little bit. Are they the team to beat in the NFC, or do you still kind of like the Panthers?
No, I think they're better than the Panthers.
Okay. What about...
I could just be vengeful against the Panthers. I'm not really sure what it is, but I just feel like they have more momentum going on their side. They seem to all be clicking right leading into the playoffs, and I just feel like they're getting hot at the right time. And the Panthers have been hot all season, but they're almost, I don't know if they're pulling back. I don't know. They just, they had to lose a game. It's hard to win them all type thing. And their season reminds me more of the Packers when they were going undefeated for so many weeks, and then they lost to a nobody team. I don't know. I just see them maybe getting shaken up in the playoffs.
Right. I think Arizona is the team to beat in the NFC, and if that's the standard that the Packers are going by, well, they failed that test. So I don't see really the Packers or the Vikings being a really strong contender to come out of the NFC, but still, it'd be nice to have another division title under their belt after this weekend, right?
It would be nice, man, especially for you, because you'll never hear the end of it if the Vikings unseat them.
Right, being right on the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin, where I am right now. It'll be tough. I mean, you can always point to, the Packers won the game earlier in the season, and it's going to be they lose on a tiebreaker because the Packers lost to the Bears and the Lions. So, yeah, there's that. But there are some people who are saying that the Packers should lose this week to try to position themselves as a 5 seed, so they have to play Washington in week 1 and kind of avoid Seattle. And I think that talk is just stupid and dumb.
Well, I think that just sets them up to start going downhill right away.
Yeah.
I mean, you wanna head into the playoffs winning and doing well, and there's no reason for them to lose at this point.
I agree, and I mean I don't want to play Seattle either, but if that was a breaks, then that's what. You play the cards you're dealt, and I don't think going into Washington and trying to win a game is a guarantee by any means. I mean, I don't necessarily like the Packers.
I mean, we reflect on the season this past year, and they've lost to really crappy teams, and they've beaten really good teams. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, unexplainable kind of season. Like, they play really well sometimes, and then they don't other times.
And I know you want to point to health as kind of a differentiating factor between last year and this year. I mean, we've talked so many times about how the offensive line last year was able to stay healthy for all 16 games in the regular season. And this year we're trotting out Don Barclay and Josh Walker and J.C. Treader more than I would like to. And I think those guys are okay. But, I mean, what was it, 9 sacks or 7 sacks against the Cardinals on Sunday? That's way too many, and that's throwing Rodgers off his game a little bit. He's not who he.
Oh, lucky he's not hurt.
Rodgers is, we're lucky Rodgers isn't hurt. I mean, that's
getting beat up.
Knock on wood right now, because that would certainly spell the end of the season for the Packers, but. I don't know. I mean, the offensive line hasn't been cohesive and consistent over the course of the whole season. The whole Jordy Nelson thing, people try to downplay that a little bit, but it's not the team that the Packers have fielded in the past years. So I think the expectations need to be a little different as well.
Right. Well, and I think too, we're not used to seeing a weak offense, and that's really what we have. Yeah, our defense clearly didn't do enough on Sunday night, but. For the most part, they've been able to be a more consistent factor than our offense has been.
Right. And
I would say.
Yeah, and there's been certainly some bright spots on the defense. Mike Daniels, Clinton Dix, some guys that you've certainly liked as building blocks for the future. But something's got to change, right? There's got to be something that's a shakeup. I don't know how big. I don't know exactly where, but... You got to agree, right? You can't go into the 2016 season with the kind of exact same personnel and mindset and approach, right?
Well, I mean, so what kind of coaching shakeup are you talking about? I'm assuming that's where you're going with personnel.
Yeah, I mean, somebody described it really well, I think, over the weekend, that the Packers right now are kind of like where the Philadelphia Eagles were with Andy Reid a couple years ago. There was a team that had prolonged levels of success. Both teams made the Super Bowl. The Packers just happened to win theirs. The Eagles lost to the Bill Belichick Patriots when they got to the Super Bowl. But, I mean, levels of success that were continued, but you just kind of plateau, and you might need a different voice. I think maybe firing McCarthy is a mistake, but I don't know what Tom Clements is bringing to this offense right now. I know McCarthy took the play calling away from him, but my suggestion would be to bring in somebody from the outside. I don't know who that is, but somebody outside, the Packers bubble, the Ted Thompson circle, someone with a different, respected veteran viewpoint that can kind of help develop a new dynamic within the offense and maybe help them thrive going forward. Just a new perspective, and rather than trying to, rehash and tweak the same thing year in and year out.
Right. Fix the holes that maybe we aren't seeing from inside the organization.
Right. Like, you're too close to it. You don't notice that your receivers aren't getting off the line of scrimmage because they're doing the same thing that they've always done, and that has led, guys to get to Pro Bowls and 1,000-yard seasons and this, that, and the other thing. But, it's just not working anymore, and I think a shakeup somewhere in that capacity wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, after a while, people are going to get sick of just having the same success without the end result of winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
This year, I think it's become even more apparent.
So, I mean, what do you consider a successful season then? I mean, what would they have to do from here on out for you to say, okay, that was a successful season by Green Bay Packers standards?
Winning the Super Bowl.
That's it? I mean, that's the be-all,
I
end-all?
don't know. I mean, last year was a pretty good season, but are you really a winner if you don't win the Super Bowl? Nobody else cares. I mean, honestly, does anybody care that we won the division title? Sure, the Lions and the Bears and the Vikings do, but that's about it.
But I mean, like the Washington Redskins and the Houston Texans and the New York Jets, they're going to consider it successful seasons because they made the playoffs.
Yeah, but they're crappy teams.
Okay, so we're admitting that it's a different set of standards that the Packers operate under.
Well, I mean, I think if you've had X amount of success, I mean, are you really just satisfied with a division title, or do you want to go to the Super Bowl again?
Right.
I mean, for a team that's maybe never had a division title, great job. Good for you. Next year, you can focus on making the Super Bowl. We've done that. We've been there. That's like a norm now. I think to not go to the Super Bowl something has to change, like you said.
And I
think can't just. I mean, you're not. Nobody else cares if you don't go to the Super Bowl and win.
I think what it comes down to at a very basic level is that there's a very finite number of seasons that Aaron Rodgers has to play football left. I don't know how many that is. You know, he's 31, 32 right now, and he's probably got a good 4 or 5 years left of being a high-level quarterback. You would hope maybe he can hold on a little bit longer than that, but maybe he's only got 2 years left. You don't know in this league, and you know it's another season where we have one of these all-time talents as a quarterback under center, and you come up short, and so it's just another lost opportunity in the grand scheme of legacy and dynasty and all that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. No, I just think anything less than the Super Bowl right now is not going to cut it. Not with the current personnel that you have and not with the current players that you have.
Right. And
they've already achieved X status.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting to see if they maybe bring in a couple of more free agents over the course of next season. Some guys that give a little bit more depth. Sure, I know they like developing guys. Like, it's great having, Richard Rodgers and Justin Perillo and, those guys step in as tight end and kind of work on developing. But wouldn't it have been nice to go out and get a big veteran tight end that could have come in and just kind of been a professional from week one and been reliable? Like, I understand the whole draft and develop type of thing, but, in a time when Jordy Nelson goes down like that, bringing someone else up from the practice squad doesn't make you the same level of competitive team as everyone else.
Right. No, I agree with you. And maybe it took something like this season for them to understand that. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what kind of moves they have, because I honestly, the team that played on Sunday, they're not going very far at all.
No. But the last time that the Packers played the Vikings up at TCF Bank Stadium, they were coming off of a stretch of a couple of poor games in a row, and they were able to bounce back with one of their best games of the season. So
very true.
Are they going to be able to do that on Sunday night? Are they going to be able to duplicate that recipe? I don't know, but I certainly hope so, and I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, I think we have somebody who might be able to shed some light on what the Vikings are going to bring to the Lambeau Field on Sunday. Now we'd like to welcome our guest, Chris Gates, to the show. Chris covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Daily Norseman. You can find his work and follow him on Twitter at Daily Norseman. Welcome to the show, Chris. It's great having you on here.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for having me on.
So, Vikings looked great on Sunday, and we're moving into Week 17. Division title still up in the air. There's obviously a lot on the line for the Vikings and the Packers this week. But I want to rewind to the beginning of the season. Expectations were high for Minnesota, but what did you realistically expect from this team entering the season?
Honestly, I kind of expect them to be right where they are now. I think before the season, I was picking them to go about 10-6, and that's where we are right now. If they win on Sunday, they get to 11-5, and if not, they stay at 10-6. And I think a lot of people thought that this was a team that, could make a little bit of noise, but they were still kind of looked at as being a year away. And I think I still sort of agree with that. I mean, we're in the playoffs this year and everything, but I think next year is when this team is officially going to turn a corner, hopefully.
Well, I mean, you really couldn't ask for much more out of a Week 17 game than winner take all, a home game in the playoffs on the line, though, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, I think when the schedules first came out, I think everyone thought that there was a chance this game could be set up for something like that. And, this is the way the National Football League wants things. They want drama in Week 17, and, it doesn't get a whole lot more dramatic than what we've got on Sunday night.
Well, let's go back to the Week 11 game between these two teams. I took some solace reading about your guys' recap on Daily Norseman about the fact that the Packers' offensive line was banged up in that game, too. But Green Bay certainly controlled the line of scrimmage. What do you think has changed in the past 6 weeks to lead you to believe that the outcome might be different this week?
Well, going back and looking at that game and, contrasting it to the way Arizona defended Green Bay on Sunday, I, for whatever reason, don't think that the Packers, or that the Vikings, rather, came after Aaron Rodgers as much as they probably should have. They seemed like they were kind of content to kind of lay back and play coverage instead. And, when Aaron Rodgers was able to get outside of the pass rush and, scope things out downfield a little bit, that's when things got bad for Minnesota. When you look at the Cardinals game this last Sunday, I mean, they were bringing blitzes from everywhere. I think they sacked Rodgers, I think it was 8 times, something like that. And, that's the kind of thing, I think Mike Zimmer kind of said that the defensive game plan the first time these two teams got together was probably the wrong way to go. And so I would expect them to try to bring a lot more pressure and blitzes, particularly with the injury report that just came out, where pretty much everyone that starts on Green Bay's offensive line is limited at best in practice right now.
Right, and it seems like just the opposite for the Vikings, where everybody that had been hurt is now back in the mix. I mean, staying on defense for the Vikings, Harrison Smith got right back in the mix right away with that pick 6 last week. Bringing back Linval Joseph, I know he left for a little bit against the Giants, but having him, Anthony Barr, Danielle Hunter playing really well as well. So, that certainly is an improved aspect of the team as well. I mean, do you think that could kind of be the big deciding factor this weekend?
Well, I mean, they had those 3 guys the first time these two teams played, and, they had their issues there, obviously. But, Joseph sat out 3 games, starting with the game against Seattle. Smith and Barr each sat out 2 games, and one of those games was that Thursday night on a short week where they had to go down to Arizona. And even I picked the Cardinals by about 30 points that night because I didn't think the defense was going to be able to hold up without those 3 guys. But the way they played those games without those players, I think gave guys an opportunity. Guys like Anthony Harris, Tom Johnson has gotten quite a bit of repetition in the middle of the defensive line. And, being able to play to that level without those guys, I'm sure has built up the confidence of a lot of players on that defense and has given them the opportunity to get experience and see things that they probably wouldn't have gotten standing on the sidelines, or in the case of someone like Harris, even being on the practice squad for a while.
Rookie Danielle Hunter has been about as good as you could have possibly expected as a rookie third-rounder. What has he meant to the defense?
He's actually been really, really, surprising for the most part. I mean, he has more sacks this year than he had in 3 years of college at LSU. At LSU, he was asked to kind of do different things, and now that he's been brought here, the Vikings have just kind of let him use his athleticism to get after quarterbacks, and it's worked out. And that the Vikings like to rotate their defensive line. They've had plenty of situations where they'll move Brian Robinson down inside and let Hunter take his spot in pass rushing situations. And, it just gives the Vikings that little bit of extra flexibility on the defense to do the kind of things that Mike Zimmer wants to do.
And, staying with the defense then there, I mean, a guy I really liked coming into the draft was Eric Kendricks. I know certainly a UCLA flair in the Vikings linebacking core there. But, what else have you really liked about this Vikings defense, not only for, these next couple weeks, but in the future as well?
I think the biggest thing that we've seen from this defense is their tackling. I mean, we've seen over the past couple years guys missing tackles, guys just not being able to bring guys down. And with the regime change that we had, with the Mike Zimmer coming in 2014, we really don't see those issues anymore. I mean, even in the secondary, we have guys that, they don't give up a lot of yards after the catch most of the time. This team gets off the field on third downs for the most part, which is another thing that we didn't see a whole lot of under the Leslie Frazier or even the Brad Childress coaching staffs. And, that's the biggest thing. And this defense is still pretty young. I mean, this is Everson Griffin's, I believe, 6th year in the league, but, he sat on the bench for the first 4 years and didn't get a lot of repetitions. And, outside of Chad Greenway, there aren't a lot of old guys on this defense, and Terrence Newman, but, he's been playing some of the best football of his career so far. But this defense is young, this defense is talented, and they've got enough time in Mike Zimmer's scheme to know exactly what needs to be done, and just the way he wants things to happen.
Well, speaking of young and talented, let's switch over to talking about the offense now, starting with the Vikings' young quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. He's looked great the past few weeks in particular. I kind of have two questions here. What has been your overall impressions of him in year two? And then also, what kind of performance does he need to have Sunday night to come out of Lambeau with a win?
I love Teddy Bridgewater. I really do. I mean, Vikings fans have been looking for a young guy that this team could mold to be their long-term answer at quarterback ever since Dante Culpepper got his knee shredded about a decade ago. After Culpepper got hurt, it was a lot of patchwork, stopgaps, zombie Brett Favre for a year, and we now we finally have a guy that looks like he could be the long-term answer. I mean, he doesn't put up the numbers. I mean, people compare him to Derek Carr, Blake Bortles, but Bridgewater is one of the few quarterbacks in the National Football League that has an offense that runs through his running back rather than through him. And I think that if he was kind of the focal point of the offense, like Bortles or Carr or some of these other younger quarterbacks, that the gap statistically would not be quite as large. As far as what he needs to do on Sunday, he needs to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that he's given. I mean, over the last few weeks, Norv Turner has actually started calling some more of the shorter, quicker passes that don't constantly require 7-step drops and him running for his life. And these are the kind of things that they need to take advantage of, the shorter passes, like guys like Stephon Diggs and Jarius Wright get yardage after the catch, and just don't kill this team with turnovers. And that's something he's been fairly good at this year as well.
I think Mike McCarthy should take the same approach for Aaron Rodgers on Sunday night. But you mentioned Teddy not having to have the whole burden of the offense on his shoulders. I mean, Adrian Peterson always seems to play well against the Packers. Jerick McKinnon has looked really well recently, maybe even kind of the hot hand right now. What kind of dynamic between those two guys do you think works best for this offense, in your opinion?
Well, McKinnon is going to be, as it stands now, he's going to be more of the third down, the pass catcher, the guy that you can kind of line up in the slot. Adrian Peterson has never been known for his pass catching abilities or for his pass blocking abilities, for that matter. But Peterson is always going to be the home run guy. I mean, teams will put 7 or 8 guys up front to stop him, and in those situations, if you can get past the first wave of people, it's going to be something huge. But I would kind of like to see the Vikings put Peterson and McKinnon on the field together at the same time. We saw that a couple of times on Sunday night against the Giants, one with a fake jet sweep to McKinnon that wound up turning into a screen pass to Peterson for 15 yards. And, with the kind of athleticism that McKinnon has, it's just one more thing that defenses have to account for, because he's got the speed and even for a guy his size, he's pretty powerful. So, it's just one more thing that defenses have to plan around.
Well, what about the rest of the playmakers? You have Kyle Rudolph, Stephon Diggs. What about those guys? How do they play into the game on Sunday?
Rudolph has actually been pretty good, and with the short passing game that the Vikings need to continue to turn to, he's the sort of guy that should be able to take advantage of some of these shorter passes. I mean, he's got very good hands, he's got good size, and as far as Diggs is concerned, he's probably going to see a lot of Sam Shields now that Shields sounds like he's back from his concussion issues, and I don't know how many or how much success he's going to have against Shields, but he's one of those guys. Like I said, he can get the shorter passes and turn them into something big, and hopefully we'll be seeing a little bit of that on Sunday.
So Mike Zimmer, I think, it's been hugely successful, his hire in Minnesota. And he said in a press conference earlier this week, he said he thinks that the team is playing with confidence right now and that they believe, and half the battle is believing. I mean, you mentioned that your expectations were kind of met this season where you are at the beginning of the season. But, as a fan, how has your belief in this team kind of changed?
Well, you see games, they had the game against the Packers where, the Packers had lost 3 in a row and the Vikings had won 5 in a row, and the Packers were banged up and the Vikings weren't, and everyone was thinking, oh, this is finally the game where the Vikings break through and knock off the Packers and whatever, and then they go out and lose by 3 scores. The disaster against the Seahawks at TCF Bank a few weeks ago when the Seahawks were still hot. The thing to realize about this team is that, like I said, on both sides of the ball, they're still a relatively young team, and there are times where it looks like the moment might have gotten a little too big for them, but that I think is going to help them when it comes around to Sunday's game, because they'll be able to look at themselves and say, well, this is. I mean, I know it's not just another game, but this is something that can sort of help them adopt that mentality and not have them, doing stupid things, committing stupid penalties, fumbling footballs, things of that nature. So I think the sort of, down moments that they had earlier and in the middle part of the season are going to help them not only on Sunday, but as this team grows and progresses down the road.
So, looking ahead past Week 17, big picture in the NFC playoffs, with as good as Arizona has looked, and Carolina is obviously good at 14-1, are either of these teams playing Sunday night a legitimate contender to get to the Super Bowl?
Well, the thing about the playoffs is all it takes is for somebody to get hot, somebody to get on a little bit of a roll. I mean, I remember a few years ago when Arizona went to the Super Bowl. They had spent a few weeks before the playoffs started. I think they lost the Patriots by about 40. The Vikings went into Arizona and I think blew them out as well. But once you get to the playoffs, it's a one and done sort of format. And if you get a guy that gets hot, if you get a quarterback that gets hot, if your defense steps up, it could happen. Now, realistically, do I think either one of the Packers or the Vikings are going to get to the Super Bowl? If I had to wager on it, I don't think I'd bet on either team at this point. But, like I said, it could happen. I mean, the year the Packers won Super Bowl 45, they were the 6th seed in the NFC, and I don't know how much of a chance they were given, but, they ran the table and did what they needed to do and walked out as champs. So, stranger things have happened.
Well, that's a couple of weeks down the line, but we just wanted to get your input on that. But let's bring it back to Sunday night, Lambeau Field. They flex this game to prime time so everybody could watch it. What's your feeling on how this game plays out? Do you think the Packers are going to end up as the NFC champs once again, or is it going to be the Vikings for the first time since 2009?
Wow. And there's the fan answer, and there's the common kind of reality answer, and they really don't mesh at this point. As cliche as it is, as long as Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be tough to knock off. I know he hasn't looked great over the past few weeks, but he hadn't looked great going into the game at TCF either, and managed to, I mean, he didn't look great at TCF either, but, completing less than 50% of his passes, but, he kept plays alive and he did what he needed to do to get the job done. And, there's a part of me that, I think the Vikings can go in there and pull it off, but, there's just this little annoying part that, says that Rodgers is going to do what he needs to do once again and make it another loss for Minnesota.
Do you have like a score prediction? Like, do you think it'll be a high-scoring game, or do you think both of them are going to have a pretty defensive game on Sunday?
I don't think it's going to be terribly high-scoring. I don't think either team gets to 30, but I would probably put along the line somewhere around 24-20, 24-21, something like that. And it might come down to whoever gets the ball last. But, I don't see a high-scoring game. I don't see any sort of a blowout or anything like that. But, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, that fan belief and then that common sense belief that you're struggling with is something that I am also struggling with right now. I mean, it's hard to believe that the Packers are going to come out there and kick butt on Sunday after the game we saw them play against the Cardinals. And granted, the Cardinals are a great team, but I don't know. They looked like a mess. I feel like the Vikings they've got momentum, and I don't care if we're playing at Lambeau. The Packers have lost a lot at Lambeau this season. I see the Vikings beating the Packers by like 10 points. I would say like 27-17.
Amanda, wow.
But maybe I'm wrong. I hope not. Like, I hope Aaron Rodgers comes out there and people catch the ball and our defense shows up.
If it helps, I hope you're right too. But, yeah. I'm biased and you guys are biased, and that's okay because we're fans. And that's the way it's supposed to work.
I think I'm right there with you, Chris. I had written down 23-20, like right when you said 24-21. I was like, okay, we're right on the same page. I just think it's going to be a really good game. I think we kind of deserve that, and I'm hoping for that. I'm going to be watching it with Vikings fans, so I just want it to be a really good game, and really might come down to that last possession, like you said. And, maybe it's Mason Crosby kicking one into his home crowd to send the Packers off. But I like it in that 23-20 range, and I think I'm going to stick with the Vikings, even though the common sense might tell me otherwise.
Well, as a Viking fan, you get to a point where you almost get afraid to be too happy or too confident as a Minnesota fan, because it's just a matter of time before the other shoe drops, and then you wind up feeling awful. And I'm trying to avoid that. So, I would love to see the Vikings go out and win. And, if it happens, great. I mean, if it doesn't happen, sure, it's going to suck for a little bit. But, then there's a playoff game to get ready for. And, it's still pretty, still should be a pretty good game, I would think. I just hope that, just like you guys, I hope my team pulls it out. You guys hope your team pulls it out. And, it's going to be fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, well, it is fun coming down to the last game of the season. We won't know until kickoff time on Sunday night. So, thank you, Chris, for joining us. We really appreciate it. You gave us some great insight, and good luck to your team, but we do hope they lose.
Yes, thank you, folks, for having me, and good luck to you guys as well. Hopefully nobody suffers any sort of significant, season-altering injuries, and they can both go into the playoffs and see what happens from there.
And maybe we'll have a rematch match on our hands after that.
Oh, we might. Stranger things have happened once again. We could play 2 weeks in a row, and you just don't know what you're going to get with the way the playoffs are set up.
Well, Joe Webb is on the Carolina Panthers, so you don't have that to worry about.
And thank God for that.
Well, Chris, we appreciate your time, and maybe we'll be talking to you again soon.
Well, thank you for having me, folks, and looking forward to it.
All righty, thanks, Chris.
Have a Happy New Year, too.
Yes, you too.
We appreciate everyone for tuning in to the Week 17 edition of Behind Enemy Lines. The Packers host the Vikings for a primetime showdown on Sunday night with the NFC North Division title on the line. Once again, you can find our podcast on Twitter at EnemyLinesGB. I'm Chris Callaway, and you can find me at CCallaway33.
And I'm Amanda Geffre. You can find me at Amanda R. Geffre. Thank you to our guest, Chris Gates, for joining us. You can find him on Twitter at Daily Norseman. Remember, check out all of our podcasts on PackersTalk.com. and follow Behind Enemy Lines on Twitter at EnemyLinesGB. Until next time,
Go Pack, go.
This Green Bay Packers podcast is brought to you by Mayfield Sports Marketing, our official sports marketing agent for player appearances. To book a Packers player for your next event, go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances. Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.